Hi, it's Martin Doyle here. Welcome to another one of my video production diaries for my science fiction action thriller and fantasy film called The Next Way. Yeah, thanks for joining me again. Last time was talking about how we go from idea to concept, everything I did to go from idea to concept. And now this week, I'm going to start talking about the things I need to do in order to start prepping for my script to be written. I need to flesh out the concept far much more in order to be ready to really start telling that story. And so what I normally would do is I would just grab a pad and a pen or just sit down on the computer even and just start typing out all the characters. Who's my hero, who's my antagonist, and who are the supporting characters, and how they have an effect on the story, how they have interaction with each other, and I write about their histories, their traits, their flaws, their hopes, and what they're trying to do in the story, and I get all that down for all the characters. Then once I've done that, I start on the story world, creating a story world which is going to be really pertinent to how the story happens with the characters, how the world that they're in affects them, how they affect the world. So the social climate, the culture, the political climate, all these things about the world, what era it's set in. All these are very relevant to the characters and the story. And the great thing about doing that is when it comes to writing it, I've done so much research and so much prep that the story will start to tell itself, because if you put character A with character B and they start interacting with their established characters and their traits, then the reaction that comes out of them is very organic and very natural. So basically, that's how I do that. Now, one thing I wanted to get right from the get-go is thematic storytelling, because I consider myself to be a thematic storyteller. What I mean by that is that all my stories have a theme in them, or there's a really important reason as to why I started writing those stories in the first place. It's something I care deeply about, and that's why I start writing about them. And it's really good to know what the thematic point of your story is from the get-go, because if you go to a producer or a production company, you say, I'd like you guys to support this this project, would you be interested? They're going to ask you, well, what's your story about? And then you tell them what the story's about. In my case, it's the case of a vlogger who's lost his audience, so he undertakes a murder investigation to win his audience back. But then they'll say, the production company, what they'll say is, what is it really about? And that's when you come up with a reason. That's when you tell them the reason why you wrote it in the first place. How knowledge is used these days. We live in a time of great knowledge, but people are using the knowledge in so many different ways, and sometimes extremely harmful ways. It greatly concerns me, and that's why I decided to write this project. I've written theme into my projects quite well previously, but it was a bit hit and miss, I must admit. Sometimes it was a bit hit and miss, where I'd write something, I'd make it, I'd get it released, it gets to a festival or two, by which time I'm looking at it thinking, wait a minute, I'm not too sure about the themes here. I'm not too sure I did the right thing. Maybe I've overstated the theme, or I keep repeating the same singular point of the theme over and over, or sometimes it's just too many themes. Rather than different aspects of a single theme, I've done 4 associated themes rather than just focusing on the one. And it's not really how I want to tell stories. So I thought from the get-go, I better get this right. So over the last 2-3 years, I've really thrown myself into researching more about screenwriting and learning all I can about screenwriting. Even though, from the age of 14, I've been writing and performing sketches and comedy and theatre and short films and doing all that stuff. And, being so involved with the arts and a filmmaker and all those things, I've come to understand how these things work really well. I still thought there was a lot of gaps and a lot of things I need to know. So I really pushed myself to really start embracing myself as a screenwriter, not just a writer-director who writes for himself or his friends, but a proper screenwriter. And so, I've been reading all these books, and one of the books I started reading is by a lady named Dara Marks, and she has a book called Inside Story, The Transformational Arc. And this has really helped me. I mean, All the books I've read have helped me. But in this one, there's a brilliant exercise. And I just want to say that I'm not being paid to say any of that. I'm not being sponsored to say that. This is literally, about things I've discovered and all the challenges I'm facing. And getting theme right is a big challenge for me. But in her book, I found something that was really useful and helped me use theme in order to plan my film properly. So what I used is an exercise she calls a thematic point of view, where you start with a thematic subject, which is the use of knowledge, and then you ask yourself why. Why is the use of knowledge the theme of my film? And just like I said before, because I really wanted to write about how the use of knowledge is greatly dependent on our values. And that becomes a thematic point of view of my film. So then Dara would have you then break it into two different sections, okay? First of all is your plot, and then the subplot. Now, what I mean by plot is, the actual story of the film, the way the story goes, and then, how you get to the goal, the ending. So the thematic goal of my plot is to get to the point where my character comes to understand that you've got to use knowledge positively and wisely. That's the plot. So in order to work out the best thematic way of challenging that thematic goal in your plot, you then realize the obstacles should be based on the inverse of that, which is to use knowledge negatively and selfishly. So that becomes the obstacles of the plot. So then you kind of break it down again and say, well, what are the characteristics within, using knowledge negatively and selfishly? And the characteristics of that is when you're cold feeling towards other people, because obviously you don't care about how that knowledge impacts them. You're selfish, you're manipulative, you're arrogant, and you're deceptive. So the idea then is that becomes the traits of the challenges or the obstacles in the story world. And those traits can then be fed directly into your antagonist. Your bad guy or girl or whatever it is. But the antagonist of the piece would share those values or have those values in order to create the best obstacles for your hero to succeed in the plot, which is to use knowledge wisely and positively. Then we look at subplot. So in the subplot, and I must point out, people sometimes misunderstand what a subplot is. People think subplot is a story that runs parallel to the main story, and it usually involves a romance of some kind, whether the girl or guy can win the girl or guy or what have you. So, and that's not really what a subplot is. Subplot in this context is more about the internal emotional story of your hero character. And you can use a romance to bring that out and bring that challenge. And there's nothing wrong to do it, but that's probably why people start associating it more with romance. Then in fact, what it's supposed to be is how your character overcomes a flaw in order to achieve the main plot thematic goal. So the subplot goal for my character is to do with how you treat people. How you treat people is more important than knowledge. And that's his thematic goal, because ultimately, if you use knowledge wisely and positively, right, you will be using it in a way that will allow other people to access that knowledge. And therefore, that's a part of the thematic point of view of my whole entire film. So to work out the challenge for my character to achieve his thematic goal in the subplot, I have to inverse the subplot, which is what you know is more important than how you treat people. And thus, that becomes my character's main flaw. The fatal flaw, as it's called. The flaw that we all can identify with and see what the character has to overcome in order to get to their best version of themselves. Because if a character doesn't get to the best version of themselves, they don't change. And if they don't change, they remain stagnant, which is death. It's thematic death. It's the metaphorical death of a character because they've not changed. They've remained stagnant. And as a result of that, they've failed. And, everything in nature is about evolution and change. And therefore, we all know subconsciously that in order to achieve the best version of ourselves, we have to evolve past or master our flaws. So, the character traits then that derive from a person who who believes that what you know is more important than how you treat people, is that they are arrogant and they are selfish and they are, they could be bitter and they could be mean because they feel as if they know more than everyone else. Because my character, he does know a lot. He has a lot of knowledge, but the problem is that he doesn't know how to communicate that. It makes him feel separated. So suddenly, through this exercise of Dara Marx, I now know my plot, I know the subplot, I know what my character's fatal flaw is and his character traits, and what he has to achieve personally to realize that how he treats people is more important than what he knows, to realize and get to the eventual goal of the main plot, which is to use knowledge wisely and positively. And that's all come out of this simple exercise. That's what, just a few questions, and I've now got everything, including my character traits and my antagonist's traits. So that's what's really helped me here. So I've got a way of unifying my whole entire script. Everything comes out of the one singular theme. And as a result, I know how to construct the challenges and the other characters by using this principle and this exercise. So that's what I've done. And now I feel as if I am more set up in order to tell this story than I was before. So I hope that's been interesting and insightful. If you want, look at it for yourself. It's called, once again, Inside Story, Dara Marx. Other writers, in their books also talk about theme, but I really do think that for me, theme is something I want to get right at the outset. I think there are other people who just want to take a line for a walk, who just want to start writing and then discover theme later and adjust. That's perfectly fine if that's what you want to do. But for me, I know as a thematic writer, I had to get that right. And that's what I did. So that's theme. I really want to get theme right. And that's a big challenge for me to get that right. But now I feel as if I'm armed right at the beginning. Before I start writing my story, I know the thematic plot. I know the thematic subplot. And I know the thematic way that my hero is challenged by himself with his fatal flaw, and also challenged by the obstacles in the world, and how those obstacles will make him face his fatal flaw in order to achieve what he needs to achieve to then go on and win the ultimate goal at the end of the film. So I hope you found that really useful. It's been incredibly useful for me. And join me next time where I'm going to be probably talking about more about structure and genre for creating a film, especially in terms of creating beat sheets and a treatment, because obviously you have to work out what the scenes are, where the scenes are going, and how you're going to tell this story. So until next time, keep cool, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks.